right, howdy MABs, welcome back to Quant Plus. So for this week, I am going to be demonstrating pivot tables. So pivot tables are one of, if not Excel's most useful tools, and there are a lot of positions, job positions out there that like to keep an eye out for any skills that are proficient with pivot tables, and for very good reason, because what pivot tables can do is that they can extract specific information from large sets of data and let you display it in a smaller and simpler data table that anyone can easily read and understand right upon sites. So um, companies, they have large amounts of data that can take hours to just read through, and nobody has time for that. So they want to use pivot tables to find the specific information that they need, um, and so they use pivot tables to find it and just take that information. And yeah, so what I have here is a example setup. So what I have here is a rather gigantic table of bank data, along with some questions that we are going to be using pivot tables to answer. And hopefully this will give you a good idea of what pivot tables are capable of. So let's get to it. So question one asks, what is the average deposit amount of each account type at each branch? So what we're going to do to get started is we go to the Insert tab and go to Pivot Charts. Oh, whoops, almost forgot. So what you want to do is make sure your cursor is on the table that you want to make a pivot chart out of. So yeah, beforehand, I defined this table as table one using the create from selection function that hopefully you still remember. So select a table or range. So our range is table one, and we'll create this pivot chart in a new worksheet because that's just how I like to organize it. So click OK. Now, so question one asks about the average deposit amount. So what I'm going to do is we have our pivot table fields and different field names, date, weekday, amount, account type, etc. So what I'll do is first drag amounts into values. Now the default setting is as sum of amounts. That's not what we're looking for. So I'll click on the I icon, and Excel displays a pivot table field of different mathematical functions: sum, count, average, max, min, etc. Average is what we're looking for. So we will click on average, click OK. All right, so average amount is now displayed, but we need to add more categories. So question one asks for each account type. So here's account type, field name. I'm going to click on that, drag it, and into rows. Okay, here we have our account type: CD, checking, IRA, and savings. Question one also asks about each branch. So I'm going to find branch, click and drag it to columns, and here we have our column labels, or the branches: Central, North County, and West Side. Going to make these numbers a bit simpler, easier to read, and get rid of the decimals, make it easier on the eyes. And this is how you pretty much answer question one with a data table. You have your account types listed in the rows, branches listed on the columns, and our average deposits listed in this table. Okay, so you probably notice here this chart here. So my version of Excel, I already made some settings to display the chart as I make the pivot table. What you can do to make a chart is you can click on your pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze, and then you can click on Pivot Charts, and immediately Excel will generate a chart based on your pivot table. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So let's move on to question 2. So which day of the week accounts for the highest average deposit amounts, and what are the minimum and maximum deposit amounts on each day of the week? All right, so notice here, question 2, question 1 asked for just the average deposit amount, but here question 2 asks for not just average deposit, but also the minimum and maximum. It's asking for 3 different values. All right, so just like last time, we will go to Inserts, Pivot Charts, Table 1, New Worksheet, click OK. Actually, before I go on, I'd like to go ahead and rename my pages. My name is to question 1 because this pivot table answered question 1. I'll rename this to Q2 because we are answering question 2. All right, so question asks days of the week. So I will go to weekdays and we drag it to rows because that is our categories. Then it asks for the highest average deposit. So I will drag amounts to values. Sum is the default. I gotta change that. So average of amounts, click OK. Gives me average. Want to just get rid of the decimals to make it easier on the eyes. All right, so it looks like from here, the day of the week that has the highest average amounts is on Mondays with 97.96. So that answers the first part of the question. The second part asks for what are the minimum and maximum deposit amount on each day of the week. So what I'm going to do next is drag the amounts field name into values, not once, but actually twice. So first I will change this field name to a maximum of amounts. And next, I'll change this to minimum of amounts. And just like that, the pivot table shows us the maximum amounts as well as the minimum amounts for each day of the week. All right, so let's move on to question 3. So question 3 asks, what types of accounts do tellers open most often? And what is the percentage of each account type in the total number of accounts opened by tellers? So once again, inserts, pivot chart, table 1, new worksheets, okay. I'll rename this to question 3. You don't really have to rename, but I just like to, just to keep track. So to get started, what I would like to do, so first part asks what type of account. So account type, we will drag this into our rows. Okay, now we want to find out how many times the accounts are open. So I'll drag amounts into values. And I want to change this to counts because we want to keep track of how many times it was opened, not how much money was deposited. So it may look like we have the answer, but that's not really it. What we need to do is we need to find out the we need to find out how many times the accounts are opened by tellers. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using the filters section. So here we have the opened by field name. We'll drag this to filters. All right, so our filter shows up. Right now it's showing all new accounts and tellers. We want to find out the accounts that are opened by tellers. So we're going to uncheck new accounts and automatically The pivot table shows the number of times the accounts are opened by tellers only. If you want to display both tellers and new accounts that were opened, you just check both new accounts and tellers. But right now we're looking at tellers, so we'll leave it at that. Now, the second part of the question asks, what is the percentage of each account type and the total number of accounts opened by tellers? So once again, I'm going to drag amounts into the value section. I'm going to set it as accounts, but this time, since I want to set it, display it as a percentage, I'm going to display it as percentage of the column total. Click OK. And just like that, the pivot table displays it as displays the percentage of each account type. All right, let's jump to question 4. So what is the distribution of the account's amount in increments of $5,000, and highlight the range that accounts for at least 25% of the amounts count? So insert pivot charts. Okay. Question 4. Hopefully you're following along. You'll be able to remember this better as you're doing it rather than watching and listening. Okay, to get started, what we want to do is find the account amount. So this time we'll drag amounts not into values, but into rows, which results in a lot of row labels. And then we want to find out the account. So I'll also drag this amount to values and not sum. We're going to click count of amount. So actually want to display this as a percentage of the grand total. So click OK. Now, obviously there are a lot of row labels. Nobody's got time for that. So what we want to do now is we want to rearrange them in increments. So you click on your pivot table, go to pivot table analyze, and then go to group selection. All right, so this is how we're going to set up our increments. So we're starting at 1. Then we end at 90,000, that's our highest number, and we're going to go by $5,000. Click OK. And just like that, our row labels are drastically, the number of row labels that we have are drastically decreased, much more clear, smaller, easy to read. And we have our count amounts listed as percentages right here. Now the next part, second part of the question asks to highlight the range that accounts for at least 25% of the account amounts. Now you could just look at the table and just, click go to home, highlights, and just be done with that. But there's actually another way, especially when the table is still too large and you don't have time to just highlight specific cells. So what you can do is go to home and go to conditional formatting. You may want to highlight the column ahead of time. So conditional formatting allows you to highlight the data table and make it to where Excel highlights specific cells that you wanted to based on the rules that you write down. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a new rule. Set it to classic. And then we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. So what I want to do is find out, answer the question, highlight range that accounts for at least 25%. So what I'm going to do is I'll type down my formula, equals B or B2 is greater than or equal to 25%. You can pretty much choose whichever style you want. I'll go ahead and click red text and click OK. Whoa, wait, hold a second, that didn't come out right. Oops, my mistake. Okay, there we go. My mistakes. Guess my hand brushed over a few keys. Okay, so just like that, we automatically highlighted the rows that have percentages higher than 25%. And we can also do the same for the count of amounts. So what I'm going to do is highlight this, go to conditional formatting, create a new rule, classic, use a formula to determine which cells to format. And what I am going to do is simply type on equals B2 because that's where the percentage is greater than 24.99%. I'll just leave it as light red fill with dark red text. Click OK. Oops, hold up a second. Strange. Okay, there we go. And just like that, that is how you can highlight specific cells in the table to find out which numbers have like a higher number than say 25% or 10%, 50, whichever you need to find. Okay, so next, let's go on to the last question. How does the central branch compare with the other two branches? So, inserts, pivot charts, table 1, new worksheets. All right, rename this to question 5. Okay, so for this one, to get started, we'll go to count type on rows. We need to find out the branches, so we'll bring branches to columns. And then we need to find the value. All right, so amounts, drag it to values. And this time we're going to set it to sum of amounts to compare. All right, so looks like Central Branch compares, so how Central Branch compares to North County and West Side, you can clearly see. It's a bit similar to the pivot table we used on question 1, only difference here is that we're using sum instead of average. So at this time, I'd like to introduce another feature of pivot tables called slicers. So what slicers are is that they allow you to, they're pretty much a visual filter and allow you to filter which information you want to see and which you do not want to. So here you click on your pivot table, go to pivot table analyze, and then you click on insert slicer. So you have different categories of slicers based on your field names, date, weekday, amount, etc. I'm going to start with a weekday. So click weekday and get OK. All right, so here you have your slicers, and let's see here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So let's see what happens when I click on which weekday. So I'll click Monday. So you'll notice here that the pivot table numbers changed right away. It's because I'm clicking on the sums of the amounts that are shown on Mondays. Not all weekdays, just Mondays. Click on Tuesday. It shows the values listed in the data table on Tuesdays. Click Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now, if you want to display it for multiple days or all days, you click on the checklist for multi-select, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Wednesday. Yeah, this is why pivot tables are such a very, very useful tool. You can just organize your data in just a few clicks, just like that. In fact, so slicers aren't just limited to one. You can add in as many slices as you like. So let's actually add 2 more. Let's insert opened by and types of customers. Okay, so here we have new account, opened by, new accounts and tellers, existing, new. Let's click on tellers only. Yeah, the number instantly changes to tellers and customers. Let's click on new customers. Already, it just changes straight to the data based on new customers, just like that. And as usual, you can, just like weekdays, you can click multi-select to select all of them. Yeah, so you can display your data with slicers in a number of different combinations. Say your job is to find out the data from based on the tellers and new customers. You just click on tellers. First, you got to disable the multi-select. Click on tellers, and you can get just that. So yeah, this is like very amazing. Like pivot tables can be very versatile, and when you get into the meat of it, you can like instantly find information in just a few clicks, um, and yeah, that is just how pivot charts or pivot tables work. So hopefully you were able to follow along, and hopefully this gives you a good idea of how to use pivot tables. So that is it for my demonstration. Hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys later. Take care.